Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. There's an issue that's come up recently which I have become increasingly concerned about, and that's concerning the revoking of orders. Now, I on occasions have people contact me and say, look, is it possible to revoke an order if a child is on a GOM 18? And I want to give you my response because I think it's really important that we understand and don't build false hope, I guess, around what may or may not happen if your child goes on a GOM 18 order. So this is my take on it. So please bear with me, and if you have any comments to make about this, please also let me know. Hi Tracy, good to see that you're on board as well. Now, the issue is this, is that often workers will say to a parent, look, you may just well accept the GOM 18, and because later on you will be able to have that order revoked. Now, the reality is, yes, you could. So according to, and I can only talk about South Australian legislation here, but I'm assuming that it applies across all states and territories, because you do have the right to go back after a period of time, say, for example, 12 months, and apply to have an order revoked. Now, the caveat I'm going to put around this is that I am not a solicitor, so I don't know what the legal ramifications are. I can only talk from my own experience of 15 years working with parents who have had this particular issue and been told the same thing over and over again. And if anybody has any comments to make around success around this, I'd be really happy to hear from you, because my experience tells me there's very little success. It isn't that people don't have orders revoked, and it isn't that this can be an unsuccessful project. I would love to think that there are more and more people that can apply to have an order revoked and they're successful. So what I want to say, though, is most orders that are revoked are usually instigated by the department. So, for an example, a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid may be running away from placement on a continual basis and running back to their parents' place. And in doing so, the department thinks, well, this is a bit too hard. We're never going to be able to keep this kid in our care, so let's just revoke the order and have them live with their parent, and that's it. Now, I know of a number of occasions where that actually has happened, where kids have voted with their feet and chosen to go and live with the parent. We know that happens. But when a department worker comes to you and says, you can now, once we've got the GOM 18, you can go and have your order revoked, it is them encouraging you to accept their application rather, and to agree to that, so they don't have to go through the court process, and so that you give up and that they win their case without any effort whatsoever, because you're choosing not to go to a trial. Now, there's a number of things that concern me around that. Number one is, is it possible to get funding to go for a trial? I've spoken about that many, many times. No, it's really difficult. Are you able to find it? So someone asked me yesterday, is my solicitor going to be working for me? I say, I don't know. But I can tell you one thing's for certain. If your solicitor applies for legal aid for you and they win you legal aid, then their application to legal aid has been so substantive and argued it for you so well that they are then representing you appropriately. If you believe that you have put everything in place in order to have your kids back, and the solicitor is unable or unwilling to apply for legal aid for you, then clearly they're not going to represent you appropriately. So tell them to bugger off, because you need someone representing you that's appropriate. But when it comes to having an order revoked, we need to remember that the department want to hold on to your child. For them to have to revoke an order is virtually them saying, look, I'm going to give up on this, and that I no longer want to, they're saying that I no longer want to look at it because it's too hard for them. but they don't like to lose. So they're going to suggest, because they believe that they are the best carer of your child and that you are a crappy and shitty parent, therefore they're not going to permit you to have this child back in your care. It doesn't matter how long that child's been in care, because their argument will always be that the child is now happy and contented and that everything's rosy for this particular child and that you no longer have the attachment that you would have had the child remained in your care. Not your fault, because they've removed the child. However, they will argue that you will not have the attachment required in order to satisfy this child's needs. Now, interestingly enough, I was at a meeting last week where there's this kind of other argument that tends to take place, which really pisses me off. And it is that if we go for a GOM18, nothing's going to change. The reality is, when you go for a GOM18 and the kid is on long-term order, everything changes. So I said to the social worker in the meeting, I know what's going to happen. You're going to eventually, the father in this case wasn't seeing the child anyway because of obscure reasons, but wasn't, should, but wasn't. And then the department was saying, well, everything's going to remain the same. You still have contact, whatever. And I said, no, they won't. Once they go to a long-term order, the contact will drop down to one visit a month. One visit a month for an hour, as opposed to the weekly visits that they have right now. And you will not be re-engaging with the father along the way because you just won't be bothered to do that, even though he has just as much right as the mother does. So, and that your contact will be less. And there were 3 kids involved in this particular case who are really close to each other. And I said, and eventually you're going to separate those kids. And you also can't guarantee us that they're going to have one placement. They may have many, many placements. As separated kids, they might be more and more distressed by that separation. Placements may fall apart, and probably will with these particular kids. And I looked at her and said, "This is where," and she just could not respond because she knew I was right, even though the other message that she wanted to be given to these parents was GOM18 was a good thing because at the end of the day you will still remain have all the contacts that you currently have. Well, that just is not true. That's crap. Yet they insist on being able to, I guess it's kind of like conning. So they attempt to con people so that the parents will believe that either things aren't going to change or that they can go back later on and have an order revoked. Even when parents have done everything they need to do up until that point in order to have a court agree for them to have the children returned to them. Even though they've done all of those things, they will still argue that you can have the order revoked. And it's just not true. No matter which way you look at it, it ain't true. So what I suggest that people do is that they challenge this notion around the GOM18. And always, if you believe you've done the work. Now, that means that if all the other issues that the department have highlighted, whether you agree they're in your life in the first place or not, providing you've addressed them, right, adequately, and you've had a reasonable time to do that, namely, hopefully, a minimum of 12 months, then, then you should be okay to go back. You should be okay to have a trial so that you can talk to a magistrate about all the things that you've done that have been helpful to you and that has changed your life. And when I'm working with parents, one of the things I always focus on is the language you need to use, not language you would normally use to describe your circumstances, but language you need to use so that the magistrate and other people or the magistrate in particular, who's going to make the decision anyway, so that they understand the progress that you've made. And often that responsibility is about, using language that tells them what you've taken responsibility for, what you've changed in your life, and what's happening for you right now around all of that stuff that was a concern to the department. So I'll just go through. Yep, Karen, good to see you there. If you've got a comment about any of this, please pop it on Facebook. I can have a look at it. And a prohibit order B. Can Section 98, Tracy, you're talking about another piece of legislation in another state, so I don't know. Tracy, if you could just tell me what that legislation briefly is, that will be fine. I might be able to answer that. 90A, prohibition order be revoked. I've got no idea. Also, please remember, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm prepared to stand corrected over any of this stuff. And Karen Avery's not here today. It just happens to be me because it happens to be on a Wednesday afternoon, normally on my day off, but here I am. If you've got any further comments to make about that, please do. Look, I want to remind people also that on Wednesday night, tonight we've got a group happening where we're talking about the impact of removing a child at birth. And if any of you have had those experiences around a child being removed at birth, really, really interesting group to be a party of tonight while we generally have a discussion around all of that over the internet. You'll receive a login detail for that later on in the day when Avery will put that up. And Mahalia says, my sister and my brother-in-law lost their two girls for 18 years and they only get to see their girls once every 3 months for an hour. Once every 3 months for an hour. That's disgraceful. It's heartbreaking. My sister cries herself to sleep and wishes that she wasn't born with a disability, and DCP won't give the girls to family because they said, and that's the other thing too. Thanks, Mahalia. At the moment, a lot of people will have general access for family members and that sort of stuff while the department's doing their assessment crap. But when it comes to the kids being a long-term order, all that stuff goes out the window. So if there were grandparents, siblings, other people that were involved in these kids' lives, that's gone. Don't expect that to come back in a hurry, because often foster parents cannot be hassled about the needs of children to connect with other members of the family, because some foster families, not all, but some foster families see this foster group, these foster kids, as their kids, and there's kind of like this sense of ownership crap happens around these children. So they then see them as their family to the exclusion of the biological family. So grandparents and other people, aunties, uncles and others, will not be a party to any of these access arrangements that the department say they will do, but in actual fact aren't interested to do. So Mahalia, thanks for that. That was interesting. And that's really sad that they only get to see them once every 3 months for an hour. That's disgraceful. And I often wonder, how can anybody argue that that's in the best interest of the kids? Because clearly it isn't. My son is cared by a secretary order. We had one phone call. I don't know, Shari, what a secretary order is. One phone call in 15 months. He just moved placement again. They don't even assess me for him to come back. For people, you see, the interesting thing is, for people like Shari, who may have got all their issues under control, they're dealing with it, they've moved on, they've progressed. For her, even if they won't allow a phone call. So their efforts, and the thing that pisses me off most is that the department will say that their efforts are based on, even when a kid's on GOM18. I've heard some people in the department say that their efforts are still about reunifying the kids when possible, hence the reason why you go off and get an order revoked. I've had cases where I've fought to have the parents reunited with their kids, and the department, in a sense, have agreed with it, because they have said, well, look, all those issues that were there initially are no longer there. They've agreed with all of that. And we've said, okay, let's go and have that order revoked. And they say, we can't revoke the order, you have to. That's bullshit. They can actually go back to court and say, we want these kids returned back to their parents. They can do that. I know of one case where a young girl was returned back to her parents because she kept on running away and other stuff, and she was disruptive in placements, and the department realised that it was better for her to be with her parents. They put her back with her parents, but they maintained their order in place even while she was back with her parents, and she's doing extremely well with her parents, made some fabulous progress. So, and eventually they decided to revoke the order. So I know it can be done, but if the department says that you're the one that has to revoke the order, that's crap. You're not the one that has to revoke the order. They can revoke the order if they believe the child will be safe back in your care. And Sarah, I took DCP to court and it cost me $10,000. Sarah, did you win for that $10,000? Did you have a good lawyer with that $10,000? The other thing I just want to remind people too is if you want to have a conversation with me, and whether it be a live feed or whatever it is, feel free to give me a call. So you can. I'll just punch in my email address so that people can get this. Sorry about squinting. I'm still having trouble with my eyes. Got to read that, see that's right. Yep. So I've just put in my email address. If you want to contact me and have a conversation with me about going live or doing an interview and me editing it, if you want to have a look at the style of stuff we've been doing, go to Darren Perry's interview, which is up on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page, and let me know if you want to, and we'll organise a time where we can have a conversation similar to this. And if you're watching this on YouTube, which I hope you are, and also on Twitch, but particularly on YouTube, could you please subscribe and ring the bell, if you wouldn't mind. So, okay, now, so as I was saying, so Sarah, I want to know whether you got your $10,000. A revoke here. So legal aid will not fund a revoke here in New South Wales. It needs to be a Section 90 application where significant changes can be demonstrated. I think I appreciate that it might be you might give it a section number, and I don't know what section it is here in South Australia is under our legislation as well. I can't cite that to you just at the moment. Perhaps I should have looked it up. But at the end of the day, there is a section under which you can put in that application. And yes, I agree, Tracy. The application is about how much a person has changed. That is what this is all about. You should never put in an application if drug and alcohol use, domestic violence, mental health, whatever is still a problem. You shouldn't put in an application if that's the case. If those issues are still there, but if they're not there, and you've changed your life around or done whatever was needed according to the department, and you can demonstrate that, then yeah, and I'm sure that if you can do that, a Section 90 would apply. Don't have an issue with that. But Sherry, it's care by a secretary order. You can apply to revoke it. Go to court, ask for papers to revoke a care by a secretary order. Oh, okay. So that's the terminology, obviously, that's being used. Is a long-term care you can apply to revoke it too. My friend applied and lost, unfortunately. Sarah had a baby removed at birth. They gave him back at 6 months old. Sarah, if you want to join that session tonight, please feel free to do so. We'd love to hear from you. And I'd like to hear what that experience is like. I appreciate you got the child. That's fabulous that you had a child returned to you. However, if you could attend this meeting tonight and talk to us about that experience for you, that would be great. It's not a DOM, it's a GOM. It's a guardianship of the minister, Tracy. Sorry if you didn't understand what I said. GOM 18 is simply an order which says that the child remains in the care of the state until they reach 18 years of age. It's as simple as that. Wendy, my visits to my son, who is now 7, was dropped from once a month to once every school holiday. And I've known that too, where a number of people have had their accesses completely. So most times it goes to once a month. But I've known parents who've had their orders dropped to once every holiday, and then they get to see the kids basically once every 3 months. It's appalling. Certainly not in the kids' best interest. It could build a resilience against seeing... What? A resilience? How do you build a resilience about seeing your parents? And so we admit that it is this wrong for them to do. The social worker should stand up for his or herself and advocate for you if they believe that access arrangement was wrong. Kirby Secretary is what was formerly a ward of the state order, I believe. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So Linda says, how are these children ever to know how truly loved and wanted that they are? And I could not agree more, Linda. I think that often these children have no... you can... even as a foster parent, you can love the kids, right? And I know that a lot of foster parents, they do love these kids that they've got in care. That's why they do it, many of them. They want to contribute. Some of these kids need that sort of love and care. I get all of that. But for a functioning parent who is able to love their children unconditionally, that is a different form of love. The love you have for your kids is completely different than what some other person may, or some other carer may offer these children. So, it's like saying, a bit like saying, the love that you have for your kids is different than the love that your auntie and your uncle and others may have for you. It's a different, they might love you, but it's a different form of love, and it's certainly filled with a whole lot of different experiences and so forth. So definitely true. How to attend the meeting, Shari? You just go. So it's at 7:30 South Australian time. It starts. So if you're in another state, it's 7 o'clock. If you're in Western Australia, it's 5:30, whatever. But just go and look at our Facebook page. Avery will put up a post later on today with the link, and you connect using MS Teams. So feel free, anybody who wants to get on board, we'd love to see you. Just connect to that link, and we'll invite you in. Okay, look, I hope that is explicit enough. I've answered and I've been able to answer most of the questions or the issues that you've raised. Keep having this conversation. Can I also suggest that you share this video around to your own Facebook pages, if you would. Let many people know about what we're doing here at the Child Protection Party, and to let people, I think, know what we stand for. We stand for representing and improving the outcomes for kids. And it's right across the board. So it's not just child protection, it's a whole range of areas in which we're working in order to improve outcomes for kids. So thanks everybody for being with me. Please keep adding the comments. I'll get back to them if I can. Take care of yourself, look after yourselves, and in these troubled times, please be safe.